I want to get on here and just talk about the law for a moment. This is kind of a departure from what I have been talking about, but I think this is really important. Uh, now, the law has often been misinterpreted as a set of rules that God expects people to follow. But that's not the case. It actually was used to as an escort to lead people to Christ. Now, another thing about the law is that us, aside from Israel, have never been under it. We have never been under the law. We have never, nor will ever be under the law. That's Israel. Israel is still under the law because they rejected Jesus. See, the law didn't quite lead them to Jesus. It didn't escort them to Jesus. That doesn't mean the law failed. It means that they took the law wrongly. They took it as we need to follow these rules. We need to purify ourselves for God, and we need to cleanse ourselves of sin and all this kind of stuff. But really, that's not what the law is for. The law is for them to see that they are sinful and that they needed to, you know, direct their attention to Christ and put their trust in Him. That's what it was for. So the law didn't fail, but man failed the law, one could say, because they didn't look at it in the biblical way. They didn't look at it for what it was designed to be. Um, so Israel never quite got that correct because the goal for Jesus was when he came on this earth in his ministry, his goal was to lead all Israel to him, to believing in him, because if that would have happened, the kingdom would have came. But here we are over 2,000 years later, the kingdom still has not come. Why is that? It's because Israel rejected Jesus. There was a second attempt of this after Jesus' ascension, and this was Pentecost. And this was supposed to be the event then that would lead all Israel to believing the truth. And as a result of that, the kingdom would have came. But because like for instance, Stephen got stoned. That was an indication saying that Israel was not ready, and so and they're all this time God has been getting them ready for when Jesus comes and rules, but that time has not come yet. It's approaching very soon and very quickly. It's going to be after the tribulation, but it still hasn't happened yet. As of right now, as of I think November 7th, I think that's the date today of 2020, that has not happened. So what do we do about the law then? Well, we simply don't quote unquote put ourselves under it because we were never under it. We've always been free from the law. Okay, the law has never been for us. Notice that the Apostle Paul never once brings up the law when he talks of the message that saved him, which is found at the beginning of 1 Corinthians 15. He never brings up the law at all. He just says that Jesus died for our sins according to the scriptures, and he was entombed and rose again on the third day according to the scriptures. That's all he says about that. He doesn't bring up the law or anything else to try to lead us to Christ. You know, he simply lays it out as it is. Now notice this. This is what I find interesting. I was just thinking about this a little bit ago, how Israel did not have the law correct before. When they were still under the captivity of sin and death, they did not have the law right. They still thought they had to better themselves, they had to cleanse themselves, where Jesus was the answer and is the answer today. And now, since Jesus died on the cross for the sins of the world, their sins too have been taken away, but they still believe that they need to keep the law. So this is a tradition of Israel, and Israel is about tradition. See, so that's still going on today. They are still thinking that they need to clean themselves up. So even when they were captives of sin and death, you know, before Jesus died on the cross for their sins, um, they couldn't clean themselves up. It couldn't be done. There's just no way, because it's not through man of which this happens. It is through Christ that this has happened. So you take that, okay, that was in the past, and now we're in the present, and they have had, since Jesus' death, their sins taken away, but they are still thinking that they need to clean themselves up, you see. So either way, that just shows that their interpretation of the law is never going to work, no matter what circumstance mankind is under. Whether they're under sin and death, it's not going to apply. Whether they are no longer under sin and death, but in life and in right standing with God, it's not going to work in the way of which they think it has to work, or they think that it does work. Um, the Apostle Paul even said, the law, he was thankful for it because the law showed him that he coveted. He showed him the law showed him that he did bad things. The law showed him that he missed the mark. So he was grateful for the law for that. See, Paul had the right idea of what the law was for. That's why he wrote, that verse where he says the law is the escort that leads us to Christ. You see, um, so yeah, but that's just that's a truth, that's an insight that the nation of Israel has not yet completely grasped. Now, there may be some here and there in Israel that have, but a majority of Israel, not all of Israel, has. So I just wanted to share that this morning. I will get back to talking about other things soon. God bless.